Welcome to the Minx and Muse podcast. I'm your host, Crimson Minx, Creatrix of Minx and Muse, a dark feminine playhouse where we awaken our innate magic through esoerotic dance and witchcraft. Welcome to the portal of enchantment. Welcome, Kyndyll Lackey, to the Minx and Muse podcast. How are you today?
Oh, doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me, Crimson.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I've been wanting to have you on to talk to our witches. So, just as a slight introduction, I'm going to have you introduce yourself as well. But Kyndyll has joined us in our virtual community, the Minx and Muse Multiverse, our online studio, to teach a master workshop in the past on her book, which was all about the esoteric messaging in the music of Maynard James Keenan of Tool and Pussifer and A Perfect Circle. So we'll talk about that book, but why we're having you on today is because we're actually having you back for another workshop on the sacred whore. And I was like, ooh, I think people will be really interested in hearing about both of these topics and your life as an esoteric practitioner in general. So, how would you introduce yourself?
Oh, okay. Well, when I have to put a fine point on what I am and how I practice, I usually call myself a Babylonic hermeticist. I have been practicing in the occult, gosh, 24-ish, 25-ish years, and have been professionally reading as a professional tarot reader for 22. And really, most of my attraction to the occult and to New Age and metaphysical concepts really began with tarot, especially viewing tarot from a Jungian or archetypal lens. And that has kind of guided me through various iterations of the path. And I've worked with a little bit of everything from um, traditional Wicca, all the way up to Thelema, and moving into more ceremonial magic, and all kinds of things in between. So I have been employed before for several different occult shops, and have had to have a pretty broad history, or at least understanding of various different kinds of paths that are outside what we would consider mainstream religion and spirituality.
I love it. Actually, I'm really excited to chat with you about that as well because I know a lot of our witches aren't familiar with different paths of initiation, or not. I can't say that no one is familiar, but I do get a lot of questions around that about different paths of initiation, ranging from Wicca to something like the Lema, or to I believe you are in an you what is your current um
I
member
am,
status?
yeah, I'm actually a solitary
You
practitioner.
are
Yeah,
okay.
yep, I am. Mostly just because I'm pretty squirrely. I have a hard time picking any one modality or any one path. I see truth in a lot of different places. I really appreciate the ability to blend and balance those elements as needed. So I find I have a really hard time sticking with any one tradition.
I love that because we definitely identify as like eclectic witches and chaos magicians at Minx
Absolutely.
and Muse, and that is because of what you just said. Where, ooh, I take this and I take this and I like this, but I don't like this, and don't tell me what to do, and let me be the leader of my own spiritual destiny. But I like that you have really immersed in gaining wisdom in so many different areas. So when you say you're a Babylonian hermeticist, people are going to say, what the F does that mean?
Yeah, I so Babylonic. Well, actually, I should start with hermeticist. So I because of tarot, and specifically because the tarot deck that I originally fell in love with is the Aleister Crowley, Frida Harris Thoth deck. That deck is heavily steeped in Hermeticism, which is based on systems of teaching encompassed in what you may have heard of before. It's called the Emerald Tablet, which is the short teachings of a figure called Hermes Trismegistus. And from that system of thought flows just about every other occult or New Age or metaphysical system in the West. Comes from that original philosophy, which most of us who have been anything witchy have already heard of. A lot of these concepts or things like as above, so below. Everything has vibration. Everything, magnetism is at the root of how the universe works. All of these concepts were originated in Hermeticism, which goes all the way back to Egypt and possibly before there, but it's got elements of Egyptian spirituality, Greek spirituality, also elements of early Judaism, and from those traditions, all of the rest of what we know as Western magic came. So that's the root of my practice. And then as time has gone on and I've gotten to know myself better, that old adage of we spend the first, 20 years of our lives learning to be what everybody else wants, and then we spend the second 20 years unlearning all that and finding ourselves. Yeah, that process really put me in touch with my own sexuality in a new way and helped me to understand polarity and duality in a new way. And a major piece of that is through working with the goddess Babylon, who is primarily these days would be considered a Thelemic deity. But working with the divine or sacred horror, which is what the class on Wednesday night is going to be about, which we nowadays call Babylon, helped me to get a better understanding of shadow work, which is something that is a big buzzword right now around metaphysics and the occult. It's this notion that we can't occupy just one side of a polarity, that we all actually contain within us all poles of all duality are contained within us. And the more that we get to know those parts of ourselves, the more that we come to understand and accept and heal what may have been injured or broken over time, the more we're able to inhabit a center pathway, not either extreme. And that's what that Babylonic label means for me, anyway, in my practice. And again, I'm one of those GDIs. I'm an independent through and through, so that's what it means to me.
I love that. And then you kind of touched on our workshop on Wednesday on the sacred whore, and how would you just because obviously you sign up for the workshop, join the multiverse, it's going to be in the replay library afterwards if you're hearing this after Wednesday, but how would you describe that archetype?
Yeah, so the easiest way to kind of segue into that is to think about what we commonly conceptualize the divine feminine as in the Western path. For most of us, when we think of the divine feminine, we're thinking of the maiden mother crone triptych. This notion that feminine lifespan, feminine energy traverses from innocence to motherhood and then to post-motherhood in our crone years. And essentially what that does is that organizes all feminine power around the notion of whether or not one is able to conceive and give birth to children. Now, granted, that can be viewed metaphorically. As I mentioned earlier, all of us contain all polarities. So within each of us, we have the mother archetype, we have the father archetype, we have the child archetype. But there's an element that's kind of missing, in my opinion, from that spectrum that is the horror. And the reason why I think that is because the maiden is primarily focused on getting to know herself and getting to know the world around her. The mother is primarily concerned with nurturing new life, which is giving and nurturing new life. And then the crone is primarily concerned with passing on that wisdom and passing on her accumulated wealth to the next generation. In between that maidenhood and motherhood, there is an attraction. There is a magnetism. There is a desire to be in connection with and in relation to an other that gets lumped in with the mother energy, but it's not quite the same. You really do have to be seduced. You have to be magnetized. You have to be brought in before there is relationship between two entities that then produces new life, right? So by exploring that archetype, by consciously inhabiting that archetype, what we're doing is we are tapping into our sacral energy in a healthy, productive, and balanced way that embraces our innate power, because we can't bring forth new life without the energy of sex. Just that magnetism, that attraction that brings two people together, regardless of gender expression. This notion that two separate entities can come together and for just a moment become one and produce something that is not either one of them, but is something whole unto itself and different. That makes sense. Does that answer or did I just totally talk around in a big old circle?
No, I can't speak for our audience, but it made sense to me.
Excellent.
I really love that you specified in there in a healthy and empowered way, because I think a lot of times that archetype can be confused for something that is very wounded or unhinged, and I don't feel like that at all. I feel like it's a very empowered and healthy expression of exactly that energy that you have noted is missing in that maiden mother crone triptych. So
absolutely. And any archetype can be expressed positively or negatively. Any archetype, because again, we're all of magic, all of the occult. We're talking about pendulum swings, and we're talking about the subtlety between extremes and the midpoint. So it's possible for even too much of a good thing is still a bad thing, right? And the same goes true for this archetype as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people confuse archetypes that are a bit more taboo, such as, we are all about the dark feminine here at Minx and Muse. So archetypes, even like the broader archetype of the dark feminine, as being this wounded toxic energy. And I think it's because society has projected that anything that is the taboo is problematic and bad and shameful and judged. And I love that yes, of course, anything can have, like, the maiden can have a very unhealthy expression. Like the mother, the crone can absolutely. And I love finally having voices out there giving and sharing the healthy expression of these dark feminine archetypes in general.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think part of that is just challenging the loudest mainstream voice in our culture. Simply reflecting back that there is more than one way to view and interact with the world around us. There are more than one ways to conceptualize truth and beauty, and the human experience is multitudinous. So
yeah,
I appreciate the current movement of the current witch movement as it is. It's just really, it's wonderful because it's giving people the opportunity to explore aspects of our psyches that up until now have been largely like you said, taboo. And taboo is different in every culture. So what is
Right.
taboo here may not be taboo at all somewhere else.
That's true. That's true. And I am curious to just hear about what your journey has been like on this occult uh attainment of wisdom and journey. Like for example, you talked about the Lima and other ceremonial practices. Do you have anything that you want to share around that and what you found along the way?
Yeah, well, actually, I originally started in my professional life as a social worker. And I was have a background in sociology and psychology, and became a professional social worker. And I worked with primarily women and children who were survivors of abuse and neglect and domestic violence and sexual assault. Um, that all arose out of my own personal journey with trauma, which is, I think, something that's fairly common. Um,
Unfortunately.
it really is. It's frighteningly common in the general population, and it is also extremely common for folks who survived these kinds of things to then go back and attempt to help others who may be experiencing the same thing.
Yeah.
But the reason that I start there is because, in some ways, practicing social work and practicing witchcraft were serving very much the same kind of purpose and the same kind of, um, the same logic for me, and that was attempting to, take my power back, to take back my sovereignty, to take back my independence, to establish myself as a whole person on my own. And part of that journey requires that you do the work to heal the wounds, whatever they may be. And everyone's got them. It's part of being human. I am no more fundamentally broken than anybody else. But we all have those little cracks, right? The little places where we've all been hurt. And part of taking back that power for yourself, is learning to look at those things that are painful, and, to sit with them, to sit with the emotion that comes up with them, and then transmute that into something beautiful. Whether that might be a piece of art, whether that might be a book, whether, what have you. But that's the practice of magic, right? Is transmuting energy to change the environment and our lives around us in accordance with our own will. So my long-winded way of saying that what the journey has been looking for the tools that will allow me to understand what's going on in here, much more than really anything else. And anytime I am practicing magic, I that's the goal. That's the pursuit, is to change something in here, whether that's changing my mood, changing my mind, so that I can interact with the outside world in a different way that yields different and better outcomes. And
No.
that's what's led me to tarot. That's what led me to hermetics. It's what led me to Babylon. I mean, this long and winding road. That's the pursuit, is finding what's going to help me understand what's going on up here better.
I love that. As is within, so is without, right? Bringing it back to the
Absolutely.
hermetic principle of
Absolutely.
correspondence, right? So it's
Hmm.
I love that you started with an understanding of the psyche and you found magic as the most empowering tool and
Oh yeah.
practice to delve deeper into that.
Oh, absolutely. And the magic works because it is drama. And the human subconscious, the psyche, responds to drama. It responds to story and narrative. And so when we're practicing magic, we are creating little mini dramas for our psyches to follow, utilizing archetypes that everybody understands because they live in our collective unconscious. And we're using that to speak to the part of our brain that dreams when we're, that's the biggest part of our minds. It's the part that it's the subconscious, the unconscious, the things that we don't have immediate power to drive every day. And it's what's actually driving our ship, right? So by using drama, we're able to talk to that little part of our brain and say, hey, why don't we scratch whatever itch you're having? And then once you're cool and we've got you satisfied, why don't we pivot and use that energy to something else? And that's the way I conceive of how magic works and why it works.
Yeah, the subconscious. I mean, we talk about it a lot at Minx and Muse from chaos magic terms. So, getting into a state of gnosis, we have a technique that is about using esoerotic gnosis as a way to access that part of the subconscious mind. And what I love about doing this study and exploration across different disciplines and practices is that there's always that common truth, but it's always expressed and experienced in different ways. But
Yeah.
this is why I feel like I'm always on a mission, and I know you are too, amongst witches, of making sure that the embodiment of the magic is there and that we're not outsourcing our intention to something like, oh, I'm just going to light this candle, but devoid of any kind of internal work. And then what's the point? Because we are the magic, not the candle. I like it. The candle is part of the theatrics. It's
Absolutely. And we are the meaning makers,
yeah.
right? So we're the ones who decide what that candle means. Without it, it's inert. It means nothing. But we're the ones who are imparting the meaning to that candle, and we're the ones who are setting that intention. And absent that intention, you get no magic. And conversely, if you don't do in the mundane world the actions that are necessary to back that intention that you have set magically, you also won't get any results either. It's a two-pronged thing. We must live it in our bodies as well as we can think about it and conceptualize it in our minds.
Right. I love that. I love the emergence of, I call it responsible witchcraft, or maybe it should be called informed witchcraft. But
Yeah.
I'm always trying to fight against the stigma. And I know, again, like all of our witches agree with this and are also doing this work of like this stigma of witchcraft being something that can be bought at a mall, in a mall store, or something that's an aesthetic, or something that is handing over your power to an external force, which is truly the antithesis of how, as we're saying, like adept magical practitioners understand magic to
Yeah.
truly work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's to the extent that you practice magic that way, you're giving your power away, and you're allowing somebody else to use your energy however they see fit. And so I've always been a fan of making your own stuff as much as you can rather than buying it whenever possible, even if that means that it's not as pretty as it would be, right, if you bought it. So sewing your own garments, pouring your own candles if you have the time and the space and the ability to do it, because that's stitching in your energy into the piece, and it will have meaning for you, and it will be much more powerful and potent because it's got a little bit of you in it. I agree. I really like that idea of being intentional, and also the more that we can connect what we're doing to what we hope to see the change, the more detailed we can make it, the more the vision for what we're going for has all five senses evoked in that vision, the more effective we're going to be.
Love that. Yes. And it's perfectly aligned with our archetype of the month here. It's August 2024, and our archetype is the courageous creatrix. And that's, we had spoken. I said, I knew I wanted you to have you come and do this archetype. And I said, what would be a good, we're not probably going to do the sacred whore, but what would be a good energy to bring into sacred whore? And you said anything around creativity.
Absolutely.
And I think, and so it's like, yes, owning this archetype, embodying, evoking this archetype can really help us in awakening our courageous creativity. And without creativity, I feel like our magic belongs to someone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, without creativity, the magic's not there.
Mm.
It's just, when we think about creativity, and what comes from the solar, from the sacral area, when we think about chakras and how they align with the body, and the first thing that comes to mind is your reproductive organs, right? So the most fundamental way that we create, and the holiest, arguably, that we create, is that we create life, right? We're able to reproduce, and but all of our creative aspirations and work come from that same center. So everything that we do, from a coloring page to writing a play to putting together an outfit for a performance, to choreographing the performance, all of those things, they're springing from that same energy, that same center in our bodies and in our sphere of sensation. It is all the same thing. It is all magic, and without your active participation in it, it won't go.
Wow. I love that. And, that's such a great way to put it. And it's a reminder that perhaps there is a greater nefarious intention to shame us of our sexuality, because without our sexuality, we are inherently also disconnected from this creativity. And without creativity, how can we challenge oppressive systems?
Absolutely.
How can we change the world outside of, doing what we're told and existing in the status quo that we know does not serve the greater good? And it goes hand in hand, So
Absolutely.
I'm like, you want to change the world, you better reclaim your sexual sovereignty, baby.
1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. That is the crux of what makes us alive. But what makes us human is being able to channel that energy as we will. So whereas an animal that reproduces sexually is driven by a blind impulse, a blind instinct, we are not driven by blind instinct. We are able to channel that creative energy into infinite endeavors, not just reproducing our species, but making art, and making anything that requires human thought and planning, reflecting our emotions, those kinds of things. That is the fundamental aspect of being human, and that we can tell each other about it
Through our creativity.
Yeah,
Oh my
that we can
gosh.
communicate. Yeah.
That's such a wonderful way of putting it. Are you alive or are you human?
Yeah. Oh, I love
Oh my,
that.
I mean, you said it.
You encapsulated that so much better. That was like way more succinct.
Yeah. No way, no way. But I loved the explanation. And I want to remind people that I think sometimes people say, oh, I'm not creative, I'm not an artist. Creativity, you need creativity to be a problem solver in any way. This road is blocked off. How am I going to find my way home? Creativity. You're putting together a recipe for dinner. Creativity. Just being an engineer, being a programmer, being a project manager, all of these, being a service industry. How am I going to navigate this? All of this requires creativity.
Yeah. We could call creativity, alternatively, we could call it flexible critical thinking.
Oh,
Right? You have flexibility of thought. You can consider things from a variety of perspectives, and you can choose the one that makes the most sense or is going to be the most effective. That's what creativity is. And that is all part and parcel to us enacting our will in the world.
wow.
I have a hard time believing that anybody's not creative, and that's coming from a person who always was like what you said. I'm not artistic, so I'm not creative. Well, that is not true at all. That creativity comes through loud and clear in a variety of ways. Everything from how we dress ourselves every day to how we arrange our homes, to cooking, um, any number of things. If you can do it more than one way, then the creativity is involved.
And as we talked about with the sacred whore, the way to enhance that creativity is through accessing your sexual energy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you want to know more about that, you should definitely come to class on Wednesday.
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited for this workshop. And, I specifically told Kendall before, like, don't give away the workshop. We're just going to tell him like what the idea is. But, so I won't push you more on that. But I did want to talk to you because you have been a professional tarot reader for quite some time. And you did write the book on
Yeah.
the intersection of tarot and the work of Maynard James Keenan. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, people loved that workshop. That's also already in the replay library in the multiverse. But for those perhaps who were like piqued when I mentioned that before, do you want to tell us about that creative project?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about the book. Yeah, it's called Beyond as Above, So Below: Understanding Hermetic Tarot Through the Music of Maynard James Keenan. And essentially the hypothesis, the theory that I was working on is that archetypes are present in popular culture all around us, including in popular music and uh, plenty of songs out there will correspond or equivalent, they're equivalent to tarot cards, because tarot cards are archetypes. And anytime that we are storytelling, as in what you would do in a novel or a song, you are relying on archetypes to tell that story. And the reason why a story is good or a song is good is because it's written in such a way as to be universalized via archetypes, right? So I wrote this book because I'm a huge fan of Keenan's music. And every project he's ever worked in, I just really admire his songwriting. I particularly admire his lyrics because I'm a word person. So I'm not an artist in the traditional sense, but I'm a writer, and that's how my creativity comes through. So what I did was I went through and dissected his catalog of songs, and analyzed them like I would poetry, and then apply those to the cards, the 78 cards of the tarot deck, and found that for all 78 cards, I could identify at least one song from his catalog that matched. And the reason why this became really important to me is because I instantly understood these cards that I had been working with for well over 15 years at that point in an entirely new light, because I was associating them with music that was personally significant to me, that I had my own memories associated with. And then instantly, it not only enriched my understanding of the tool, the tarot that I was using every day, but it also completely enriched my understanding and my interaction with the music. Something that I have been working with. I've been a fan of his for 30 years. I've been listening to that music for 30 years. And so seeing those two bodies of interest intersect and then enhance them both was just, it was an idea that would not let go of me until I wrote the damn book. So that was what I set about doing, and have had a marvelous time ever since. And really enjoyed being able to talk nerdy with both tarot people and tool people and Maynard people, because it opens up vast new worlds for both sets. And you don't have to like Maynard. It doesn't have to be a Maynard thing. You could conceivably, any artist who's got a catalog big enough, you can do that with any artist. So yeah, that's the me getting all in my nerdiness. And that was what produced the book.
I love that. And I love, when we talk about courageous creativity, we talk about really identifying something within us that is just wanting to be birthed.
Yeah.
That is something that is so unique to us. Like, how many people out there have the deep wisdom of both of these, the bands and the tarot and the occult knowledge to link the two.
Hmm.
And I have the book over here. It's wonderful. It's it's proof that the depth of magic and the occult and the esoteric is intertwined throughout the world around us, and that we can find deeper personal meaning to ourselves by applying it in our own sovereign and self-interested way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you very much for getting a copy of the book. I
Of
really
course.
appreciate that. But yeah, that has been a labor of love, and I'm kind of noodling on the next topic for writing, because, like I said before, writing is my mode of expression, and so I'm looking forward to kind of exploring the next topics for writing too.
Ooh, do you have anything in mind yet, or something percolating? Okay, we won't have you share it, but there's something percolating in the background.
There's a few somethings percolating in the background, and I just have to figure out which one is coming up next. But yeah, there's definitely more in the pipeline, and I'm really excited.
That's that's the benefit of having all of this sexual and creative energy just ready to flow, is that, like, the downside is, like, what project do I proceed with? And
Absolutely.
was that your first book?
It was. It was my first book.
So a lot of people I know want to write and want to put a book out there, and
Yeah.
there's that fear of, like, well, I don't have a publisher, or I don't know how to start. From someone who was, a complete neophyte, is there any advice that people can take?
I self-published, and I did it through Amazon. It was fairly straightforward and fairly easy, and the hardest part was getting over the fear of doing the thing. The do I have the technical skills to do this? Can I pull this off? I consider myself a writer, not a I'm not a tech person, so I was really really intimidated by that. And you do not have to have a publisher, and if you can operate Microsoft Word or a word processing program, you can absolutely do this. And what I usually tell people when they're talking about, they feel like they want to write a book, but they don't really know how to land on the topic, is to the look for the parts of you, the things that you know a nerdy amount of information on, and see where those two things can cross and where they can intersect, because that's exactly what I did with my book. And granted, it's a niche topic, um, but it fed my soul, and that's what you're looking for. And once you have um, backed your own creativity, once you've bought in on your own creative genius and your own intuition, it's going to speak to you more, because you have proven to it that you're willing to listen and act on what you're getting from it, as opposed to shutting it down, shoving it in a corner, ignoring it. Well, eventually that voice will go silent. So the more that you can, this goes for developing intuition, this goes for developing creative muscles, the more you can pay attention to that voice and heed what it says. Indulge it like you would a little kid, right? That kid grows up, and that kid is sure of its power, because you've been willing to listen to
Oh my goodness. It is like how we talked about birthing. It is that separate entity that
it.
that we talked about in that union. And it's almost wonderful that it's almost like our internal divine union when we're creating something like a book or a creative project, where it is almost taking that structure and the container, and the willpower of the masculine, but the
Yeah,
intuition, the inspiration, the unique feeling and perspective of the feminine, and kind of merging them. So
absolutely. I mean, the way I would very similarly conceptualize when I describe it too is like the will and the force comes from the masculine side, so that's that inspirational spark of like the Ace of Wands,
mm,
right? And then it comes to the feminine side, which is where it receives form. So when we think about what the feminine does in terms of pregnancy, is knitting together a form, making a human that is being carried within us, right? That metaphor applies across the board. You're taking the masculine inspiration, adding it to the feminine form, and creating something that did not exist before that point. And that we see conceptualized in the temperance or art tarot card. That is that alchemical process of refining elements and then combining them in.
yes, I love it. And I would be remiss, because we've been talking about this so much this month in the multiverse, of talking about how the dark feminine can really enhance this process, because we think of the dark feminine as the subconscious and as us tapping into like our depth of self. And we talk about it as uh, accessing sexual energy so that we can magnetize the resources and that creative life force to actually um, to move ahead as well, beyond the sheer force, right? Like, what if it is more magnetic? What if it is more in flow? And then using like our magic, our witchcraft, working with spirit, with energy, to instill into the project so that it flows and it is divinely inspired in a way that's like kind of beyond the mundane.
It's giving it life.
Yeah.
It's imbuing it with life, with energy,
Yeah.
and that creative spark, that in electrical current, is that special third thing. It's not masculine. It's not feminine.
Yeah.
It's the third element, and unless you have both, you're not going to get that mercurial third element. That is what makes things so, that breath of life.
I love it. And I always feel so like, to me, creativity is so important. And I am like you. I am not an artist. Don't make me draw. I did go, I have a visual arts degree, and like all my drawing courses like barely pass. Like, it's just not my gifting in the world. But like, I really did well in more of like the new digital, because this was like in the early 2000s, so it was like, late 90s, and it was like working with new digital technologies to like do like creative ASCII art, and like just weird things like that. And so no one would have ever perceived me to be artistic, but my creativity is really what I think fuels my business, like my,
Elementally.
you know I, anything, like how I want to, like you said, dress in the morning, how I want to engage in the world, how I think the biggest magic spell we ever cast is our life. And I always say, like, be we practice eroticism, accessing sexual energy outside of intercourse, so that we can be the ultimate creatrix of our life. So you are a creative. If you are living a life, it's just how are you choosing to own the ability to create your life? Are you going to live here? Are you going to go here and make and engage with these people in this way? Are you going to have this hobby? Are you going to tend to your garden in this way? It's like life is a creative spell, and it's so empowering once you own all that energy to say, oh, I'm not like a victim of circumstance. I'm actually like a real player in this. So
Yeah, co-creating our reality. Absolutely.
co-creating our reality, which I do feel like you totally get, and you're such an embodier of, and I love learning from you. And I love how you take such knowledge and you turn it into an understanding, so that you find a practice that is uniquely your own, and then you choose to share that with the world. So
Well,
thank you for
thank
that.
you. Thank you so much, Crimson. I really appreciate that. It is absolutely joyous to interact with you and your community. And like, you're doing the exact same thing. You are taking the thing that lights you up and sharing it with other people so that they can find their own thing that lights them up.
Yeah.
And the more of us who are lit up, the less likely we are to be used, the less likely we are to watch our lives pass us by, the less likely we are to get to the end of this ride and go, man, I have regrets. And we're active participants in our own lives. And that, I mean, what more could we ask for?
To me, that's the point of magic, and it's why it's so important to cultivate our creativity.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I thank you so much for the work you're doing, because as a trauma survivor myself, getting back into the body is such a major a pivot. It's a pivotal moment when we can reclaim ourselves, is being able to claim our bodies, and part of that is being able to move it as we see fit, to dress it as we see fit, to present it as we see fit. And that esoerotic approach is vital to taking that power back, and being able to fully inhabit ourselves and not just live upstairs in our brains.
Ooh, I love that, going back to the duality, not just being polarized in one aspect of ourselves. It's minds and body, it's masculine and feminine. I love that, subconscious and conscious. Well,
receptive and active.
See?
Yes.
I could talk to you about this all day, but since we're going to be talking with you later this week, everyone will be able to join in then to just get more Kyndyll. But how about I ask you, and we wrap things up starting with the questions that we ask everyone.
All right.
All right. So, first question, what is your personal mantra or source of daily inspiration?
Well, because I'm glad that I picked out a couple of them, because we've actually talked about several of them already. So, in the interest, I was going to talk about tarot, and I was going to talk about as above, so below, but we've already kind of covered those things. And so I will go with a line from Max Ehrmann's poem Desiderata. There's a line that says, "You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. Whether or not it is clear to you, the universe is unfolding as it should."
Ooh, and we are recording this on a definitely challenging full moon in Aquarius right now, and a complex cosmic sky, and so that was like almost, I know that's going to hit real hard. So that's a good one.
Thank you. Yeah, that one's one that has definitely stuck with me. It's been around since I was little kid. That used to hang in our bathroom, believe it or not, growing up.
What?
All the things.
Okay, parents. Okay, woke parents. Love
Right?
that. It's like now it's like live, laugh, love. It was like the live, laugh, love of like the woke parents in the 80s or something.
Right? 1,000,000%.
I love it. Well, okay. Great answer. Now would love to hear, what is your favorite sensuous indulgence?
It has to be kissing.
Oh, no one's ever said that before.
It has to be kissing. It's like you get to involve all five senses. And yeah, it's my favorite. It's definitely a sensual indulgence. I was going to say morning coffee, but that's not really an indulgence.
Ooh, I love the distinction. I've been asking this question on different iterations of this podcast for at least 5 or 6 years, and no one's ever said that. So fun one.
I'm a weirdo, right? What can I say?
No, you're insightful and wise. And then, what does living fully in your power as a witch look like to you?
It looks like knowing myself and finding the balance between polarities so that I can draw on either pole of any duality at will and as needed.
Ooh, I love that. Oh my gosh, we may have to have you come back to talk about like the difference between being polarized and depolarized and how important it is to be able to like find that middle path. But that's going to be a topic for another day. Hey, we may just have you create a workshop around it. I don't even know. I just feel like I just come to you and I'm like, teach us your wise ways. So
Oh, thank you. I love this. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me. And I would love to
absolutely.
do it again.
Yes. Well, let me ask you, how can people find you?
Yeah, I am the same across all platforms. It is M Kyndyll Lackey. So that's MKYNDYLLL, 3 L's, LACKEY. So just my name spelled out. And that's where I am on my website and Facebook and Instagram. I have a YouTube channel that is definitely in its infancy. And then you can also find the book on Amazon. It is in print and Kindle edition. So.
And remind them the name one last time.
Mm-hmm. Beyond, as above, so below. Understanding Hermetic Tarot through the music of Maynard James Keenan.
Oh, I love it. And if anyone, it occurred to me, sometimes we have some of the youth listening and they're like, who is this person they keep referencing? Just look up the band Tool, look up Pussifer, look up A Perfect Circle. If you're not familiar with these bands, what even happened, but they could be young, right? So that
right.
a prolific artist. So with that, Kyndyll, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to put all that stuff in the show notes too. So we really appreciate you, and I always look forward to learning more.
Me too. Thank you so much, Crimson. I enjoyed it.
Oh, you're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me for the Minx and Muse podcast. You can find show notes and learn more about the studio at www.minxandmuse.com. As a reminder, it is our birthright to transform, expand, and safely exist as sensual, conscious, and empowered